Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that
Hello and welcome. I'm Sima Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio says he will meet Danish officials next week to discuss rising tensions over Greenland. This comes as Washington continues to show interest in acquiring the strategic Arctic territory. Venezuela's Interior Minister Diosdado Cabello says a U.S. military attack that captured President Nicolás Maduro killed 100 people and wounded dozens. He called the attack on Venezuela terrible. U.S. President Donald Trump signs a memorandum ordering the United States to withdraw from 66 international organizations, saying they no longer serve American interests, while White House says the move targets dozens of UN and non-UN bodies. A U.S. immigration officer fatally shot a woman in Minneapolis, with Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem saying the officer defensively shot to protect himself. The woman has been identified as 37-year-old Renee Nicole Good. Jordan and the European Union will hold their first ever bilateral summit in Amman, bringing together Jordanian King Abdullah with European Council President Antonio Costa and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. The landmark meeting builds on the January 2025 Strategic and Comprehensive Partnership, which includes a €3 billion EU assistance package. According to Syrian media reports, Syrian Finance Minister Mohammad Yasser Barnier held talks with the Saudi Fund for Development delegation. The visit follows a January 6th meeting with Syrian Education Minister as Riyadh expands concessional financing for infrastructure and basic services in Syria. Nigeria's Air Force will take over operations from the United States following Washington's Christmas Day strikes on Islamic State-linked targets in Sokoto State. With the U.S. shifting to an intelligence and reconnaissance role, the strikes killed an unspecified number of militants and sparked diplomatic tensions. Samsung forecasts record Q4 profit as AI-driven memory shortages pushed RAM prices up over 300%, lifting chips earnings despite higher costs hitting phones and PCs. President Donald Trump has called for a massive increase in U.S. defense spending, proposing a $1.5 trillion military budget by 2027. That would mark a more than 50% jump from this year's $901 billion budget, approved by the Congress. Trump has said the move is needed for what he called troubled and dangerous times, promising to build a dream military that keeps America safe and secure. He has also warned defense contractors to speed up weapons deliveries and invest in new manufacturing plants. The president has criticized big payouts to executives and shareholders, saying they come at the cost of production. He threatened to curb pay and even cut ties with firms that fail to step up, singling out Raytheon as too slow. Defense stocks surged after the announcement, even as economists warn U.S. spending levels are becoming unsustainable amid rising global tensions. Now for this discussion, we welcome retired Major General A.K. Siwachi. He's a geostrategic expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General, for joining us once again. Good to see you. Now looking at this, what's the significance of this and the increase in defense spending, the timing, and what could be the political and economic trade-offs for U.S. increasing the defense spending by more than 50% in such a short time?
As far as US is concerned, its defense budget is about $900 billion, and this has been approved in December by the Congress. Now this year, what Donald Trump is stating is that it should be increased almost by 50% to $1.5 trillion. And what he's saying is the way the situation is all fanning out in the world and the tension increasing, the defense budget of US has to increase because if they have to guard their interests. Remember that US is the country which has almost 800 bases all around the world. Russia-Ukraine war is still continuing, and US plays a major role part of a NATO because it used to almost supply 50% of weapons to Ukraine from US itself. So the way the situation is fanning out, especially what has happened in Venezuela now, then Donald Trump is also talking about Greenland, which he's is claiming that Greenland is very important for US. He needs Greenland also. So there are number of places where the war is taking place. Gaza, Israel war has still not stopped. There can be a chance of attack on Iran again. The problem in Quad is still there, in Indo-Pacific, where the China is becoming very aggressive. China is very becoming aggressive on Taiwan also, which is a self-ruled island, where it has done a blockade and also done an exercise how to capture Taiwan. So overall, the situation is quite fluid world over. There are a number of wars which are going on, and the tension is rising, and therefore, as per Donald Trump, the US must increase its budget to almost 50%, taking to $1.5 trillion. But what happened is that the economists are warning that the income of US is far less than the spending which US is doing, and this is creating a trade deficit or a deficit as far as budget is concerned. Remember that as far as US is concerned, their economy is about $31 trillion, whereas their deficit or debt is almost $37 trillion. So as it is, there is a lot of gap in that, and now in case the defense budget is increased to $1.5 trillion, so the gap will further increase. But as far as Donald Trump is concerned, he says that this will be taken care by increasing tariff. The tariff has increased, and this has brought a lot of income to US, and that money can be utilized for the defense. But one must understand, as far as tariff is concerned, no other country is paying for it. It is the consumers in US itself are paying the tariff. So that's the thing one must be understood. But all said and done, now the US is trying to bring out this situation that the way situation is fanning out in the complete world, where the tensions are increasing. Therefore, it is very important for the US to increase its defense budget. You remember that there are certain companies which are Raytheon or Lockheed Martin. After this announcement, their share have gone by 5%. Another issue which Donald Trump is saying, all these companies which are producing defense equipment, they must modernize themselves, and they should produce this equipment and weapons well in time. And he's warning that those shareholders and those who own these companies, they are earning more than requirement. Their income must be also curtailed, and also the timely delivery of these weapons is very important. Also the modernization. So overall, Donald Trump is now saying that their defense budget has to increase. US defense forces has to modernize, and this is nothing new. It's the same thing he has propagated even in his first term, and that this pressure he has also put on Europe. If you remember, these NATO countries, once upon a time, their defense budget used to be even less than 1.5%. He pushed them to increase to 2%. Now he has said that they must gear up and increase it to 5%. So there is no denying the fact, when such a thing happens, when the defense budget of NATO countries increases or America country increases, it also activates the industrial military complex of US, because all these weapons are, majority of them are being sold by the US itself. So this brings the money back to US, there is no doubt. But certainly, what economists are saying, there is a gap which is increasing in income and the spending of US.
Thank you for highlighting that, Major General A.K. Sivaji. And please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving the focus on to South America, Venezuela's interior minister has said that at least 100 people have died in the US's military attack that ousted President Nicolás Maduro on the 3rd of January. This is the first official death toll from Caracas, though the army had earlier listed 23 of its own dead. Venezuelan officials claim much of Maduro's security detail was killed in cold blood and Cuba says 32 of its military and intelligence personnel also passed away. Interior Minister Diosdado Cabello has said that Maduro was injured in the raid and his wife Celia Flores suffered a head wound. Acting President Delcy Rodríguez has declared a week of national mourning for those killed during the operation. The report highlights the deepening crisis and rising tensions between Venezuela and the United States following the dramatic removal of Maduro. Let's listen into what the Venezuela's Interior Minister Diosdado Cabello has said.
Ocurriendo ni ocurrieron. Venezuela fue víctima de un ataque bárbaro, artero, donde hasta ahora, y digo hasta ahora, hay 100 fallecidos. 100. Y otra cantidad parecida de heridos. Terrible el ataque contra nuestro país. Eso es cierto. Eso.
Now for this discussion, we welcome retired back Major General A.K. Sivachi. He's a geostrategic expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General Sivachi, for staying with us. Now looking at this, all the development that has happened since the 3rd of January, do you see this as U.S. being successful in their operation? Looking at the death toll, looking at the fact that if the U.S.'s motive was other than oil, the regime change, since Rodriguez has taken office, who is coming from the same party as Maduro, what's your analysis?
Asuma, the one thing is very clear. As far as U.S. is concerned, it considers Western Hemisphere as its own, and it will not like any other nation to have influence there. Venezuela was totally under the influence of China. Whatever oil the Venezuela produced, 80% of this was going in China. And the Russians were also showing interest. This was not to the liking of US in any way. So that is why they have done what they have done. They have invaded Venezuela and they have captured Nicolás Maduro and his wife and taken him to US, and he will be charged now, as it is first hearing has taken place, for necro-terrorism and drug trafficking and illegal supply of weapons. Now let's see how things unfold there. Now let's 2-3 things stand out. Now as far as Venezuela is concerned, one must understand that it has got the highest oil reserve in the world. This is 303 billion barrel which is there, which is the largest, and the second one which comes Saudi Arabia, which is 267 billion barrel. Now this is almost 17% reserve of the whole world, and this has a value of almost $15 trillion. Now this is very important as far as US is concerned. US is actually wanted a regime change and wanted a control on the oil fields of Venezuela. And that was the main thing why the US did what they did. From military point of view, this operation was done in a most professional and a clinical manner. There is no denying the fact. But now the situation is that the Delcy Rodríguez, who is now the acting president and who was earlier in Nicolás Maduro as a vice president, is also not bowing down. Now, what will the next step of US? US, what it wants is to control the complete oil fields of Venezuela, and in a manner that whatever interest and income comes generated from there, they are ready to even sort of invest in Venezuela. Now let's see how things pan out. But 3-4 things also stand out as far as US is concerned. US will not like any country to have drug trafficking or necro-terrorism and other influence in Western Hemisphere, which it considers its own. The next can be Colombia, then can be even Mexico. Donald Trump is also talking about Greenland, because Greenland is very important for US in Arctic. US feels that after the temperature has risen all over the world, you find Russian and Chinese now increasing their influence in Greenland, and in case in the sea lands in Arctic are very important. If That has to be taken. Then US will like to take Greenland, but again the problem coming that if he attacks that, it will be attacking another country which is of NATO, that is Denmark. All said and done, he is working on that. But as far as Venezuela is concerned, this has been taken in United Nations also, but unfortunately nothing can happen because US will now use its veto power, because these P5 countries have a veto. Same way in European Union also, not much criticism has happened, but certainly whatever has been done in Venezuela was barbaric, and this is against all international laws and the United Nations Vienna Convention. You cannot enter the other country, which is a sovereign country, and kidnap his president and take him in your own country and then try him with your own court. This is totally unacceptable. But who will able to say to the US, because they still enjoy that power, the superpower, and they will try him. So all said and done, as far as Venezuela is concerned, their oil fields are going to be controlled by US for indefinite time. They will try to do a regime change. If Delcy Rodríguez plays to the tune of US, they will accept it. If she does not play, then there can be Action 2.0 also. That one should understand it. And remember that the oil which is produced in Venezuela oil field, it is thicker, and it requires that refineries have to be modified. But the Americans were doing it earlier, 25, 30 years back, and all oil companies have been established by US itself. So therefore the point is, the interest of the US is the oil fields of Venezuela, which is a very rich resources and which US needs. And second thing is, it does not want interference in Western Hemisphere of Chinese and Russian. This is what he has done it, and let's see how the thing fan out hereafter.
Thank you for highlighting with that, and Major General, we will be eyeing that. Thank you very much once again for joining us and sharing that insight. Now we stay in Venezuela. President Donald Trump has said that Venezuela will use profits from a new oil deal to buy only US-made products. Trump has also said Caracas will spend the money on American agricultural goods, machinery, medical devices, and energy equipment. The deal follows the toppling and capture of former Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro, according to Washington. The White House has said that the United States now has maximum leverage over Venezuela's interim authorities. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says Washington is in close coordination with the interim leadership and will dictate key decisions going forward. Let's listen into what the U.S. White House Secretary has said.
We obviously have maximum leverage over the interim authorities in Venezuela right now, and the president has made it very clear that this is a country within the United States, the Western Hemisphere, close by the United States, that is no longer going to be sending illegal drugs to the United States of America. It's no longer going to be sending and trafficking illegal people and criminal cartels to kill American citizens as they have in the past. And the president is fully deploying his peace through strength foreign policy agenda. So we're continuing to be in close coordination with the interim authorities, and their decisions are going to continue to be dictated by the United States of America.
Now we move on to U.S. In Salt Lake City, Utah. Police confirmed that a shooting outside a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints during a funeral has left at least 2 people dead and several others injured. Authorities report there are at least 8 victims in total, with 3 in critical condition. Police say the shooting began after an altercation in the church parking lot. 1 or more suspects fled the scene, and law enforcement, with assistance from the FBI, has launched a manhunt. Investigators are urging anyone with information to come forward as they work to piece together exactly what happened in this deadly attack. Now we move the focus onto Asia. Pakistan and Saudi Arabia are reportedly holding talks to convert around $2 billion in Saudi loans into a fighter jet deal involving Pakistan's JF-17 aircraft. The proposed arrangement would deepen defense ties between the two long-standing allies, especially at a time when Pakistan is under severe financial pressure and Saudi Arabia is reassessing its regional security partnerships. The talks follow a mutual defense pact signed last year, under which both countries have agreed to treat any attack on one as an attack on both. Sources say that the discussions are primarily focused on the JF-17 Thunder, a light combat aircraft jointly developed by Pakistan and China and manufactured in Pakistan. The overall package under consideration could be worth up to $4 billion, including additional military equipment beyond the loan conversion. The JF-17's appeal has increased in recent years after Pakistan deployed the aircraft during last year's conflict with India. JF-17 is widely known for its operational capability and cost effectiveness. Saudi Arabia has repeatedly supported Pakistan during periods of economic stress, including through cash deposits, oil supply arrangements, and loan rollovers. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev. He's a former diplomat, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for joining us. Good to see you. Now looking at this, how do you analyze the closeness or the alignment between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, and how could a jets for loans deal reshape the strategic and financial relationship between them? Now, also, what are the geopolitical implications? Saudi Arabia deepening defense ties. How do you think US will be eyeing this?
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
The questions are quite interesting and I think vital to Southwest Asia's future security course. And things are yet to pan out. Firstly, one should say that Saudi Arabia has been financing Pakistan through the perennial fiscal and monetary crisis that the country has been facing due to low level of exports and high imports, as well as malgovernance and overspending on defense. Saudi Arabia's loans have anchored Pakistani economy in tandem with the UAE and IMF, etc. And the loans have been often rolled over because Pakistan has not been able to pay them. And this is one of those loans of about $2 billion that Pakistan is unable to pay in hard cash. So it wants to have a barter arrangement under which the F-17 aircraft is J-17 aircraft is given over in a package deal to Saudi Arabia. And on the other hand, Saudis have their own requirements of Air Force modernization, although they have been in touch with the United States and they've relied on United States for the state-of-art aircraft such as F-35 have been promised to them by President Trump. So on first hand, it doesn't appear to add any more lethal power qualitatively to Saudi Air Force, which already has F-16s. But at the same time, I think Saudi Arabia faces a crisis within its relations with Yemen, which requires Air Force to be used quite often as an instrument of policy coercion against Houthis and now STC, Southern Transitional Council of Yemen. I think for those kind of activities, air raids, etc., against lightly defended enemy targets, J-17 would be perfectly fine and low-cost option to more expensive F-16s or F-35s. I think here also there have been past instances of United States not supplying critical inputs, including air defense and bombs for the aircraft delivery. And Saudis have often felt constrained, particularly in the presidency of Joe Biden in the past. So relying on Pakistan would be a way to offset that kind of pressure in future. Having a low-cost option, as oil prices are low these days. Saudi defense expenditure has been facing some constraints financially.
Yes.
First and foremost, the loans are not being paid anyway, so you might as well get the best possible value for their own money.
Thank you for highlighting that, Ambassador. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on to Middle East, local health authorities have confirmed that an Israeli airstrike killed at least 2 Palestinians in Gaza. Several others were wounded when a house in Gaza City was struck. The Israeli military said the strike was retaliation after Hamas fired on its troops and targeted a senior Hamas member who had directed attacks on Israeli soldiers. There was no word on casualties among the Israeli forces. Separately, an Israeli-backed Palestinian group has said that it has killed 2 Hamas members in southern Rafah, challenging the group's control in the area. Fighting has decreased since the ceasefire took place in October, but clashes and violations continue. More than 400 Palestinians and 3 Israeli soldiers have died since the truce began. Now, for this discussion, we welcome back Ambassador Mahis Sachdev. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for staying with us. Now, looking at this, even though the ceasefire, the fragile ceasefire holds, the strikes continue, and also now we know that two people were killed once again in Gaza, and 400 people have been killed after the truce began, ceasefire began. So, what more can you tell us about this situation?
I think the ceasefire holds, but is quite fragile. And Israelis have been quite proactive in terms of not allowing Hamas to either regroup or weaponize themselves further. They have also been proactive in terms of attacking Hamas wherever they are. They are in large concentrations and can be identified. Hamas, on the other hand, has about half the territory within the yellow line of Israeli withdrawal to manage, and it has been asserting itself through collection of taxes, civic amenities, and other public welfare activities. It has also been waging a war with the other militant groups whom it accuses of being Israeli proxies, particularly in Rafah area, where certain clans exist that are in league with Israel. The situation on the ceasefire within the Trump's 20-point plan is currently frozen with partial implementation of its first phase. It is stuck because Hamas refuses to disarm and disband itself. In fact, since the ceasefire, it has acted to assert its presence in within the yellow line area, as I mentioned earlier. Second phase is unable to take off so far because there is no agreement about international stabilization force, which is supposed to be comprised of Muslim countries' troops. Pakistan seemed to have volunteered, so apparently has Indonesia, but critical mass is still pending.
Yes.
Prime Minister Netanyahu's visit earlier this month
Ambassador.
to White House seemed to have nudged a bit in this direction, but once again, the progress has been slow and haltingly made.
With that, I would like to thank Ambassador Mahis Sachdev for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we stay in the region. The UN rights accused Israel of systematic discrimination against Palestinians in the occupied West Bank, describing conditions as resembling apartheid. UN Rights Chief Volker Turk has said Palestinians face restrictions on daily life, from water and schools to healthcare and land access. Under discriminatory laws and policies, the report highlights escalating settler violence, often with the support or acquiescence of Israeli security forces. More than 500,000 Israeli settlers live in the West Bank alongside 3 million Palestinians. Since October 2023, over 1,000 Palestinians have been killed, while Israeli casualties totaled at 44 people. The UN warned that settlement expansions, unlawful killings, arbitrary detention, and severe movement restrictions constitute almost complete impunity. The report urges Israel to dismantle settlements, end systematic discrimination, and respect Palestinian self-determination. That's all we have time.